Hello, everyone. We hope you enjoyed lunch and a live taping of the Daily Punch podcast with Caitlin Collins. We are thrilled to have House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries with us on stage for the top conversation. The New York Democrat has been in Congress since 2013 and is now one of two leaders of the Democratic Party in D.C. and in the hot seat today with the government funding conversation.
Let's start. This is a little bit out of order, Anna, but I think news events have overtaken the questions that we will get to eventually. So this afternoon at 4 o'clock, House Republicans are putting a CR, a government funding bill, on the floor through September 30th. It is, you guys are going to vote no. You said we are a no. You said your leadership team is a no. And my reporting would indicate from talking to a lot of your members that the vast majority of them are also no. Why is this a bad bill for Democrats to vote for?
Well, great to be with both of you. Great to be with all of you. You know, our view is that there were ongoing bipartisan negotiations led by the top Democrat on the Appropriations Committee, Rosa DeLauro, who was working with the chair of the Appropriations Committee, Tom Cole, as well as the top Senate appropriators. And those discussions were progressing. And at the 11th hour, President Trump and Mike Johnson cut off the negotiations, ordered Tom Cole to walk away from them, and then introduced a partisan spending bill that undermines the health, the safety, and economic well-being of the American people. In critical ways, I'll just give two top lines. It fails to protect Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, which we know are on the chopping block, as recently confirmed yesterday by Elon Musk. We know they are on the chopping block, and they want to cut up to, if not beyond, $880 billion from Medicaid connected to their budget. And so the bill fails to protect Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, which we've indicated for us was a line in the sand. But then it goes beyond it and dramatically cuts health care, nutritional assistance for children and families, and veterans' benefits, including from veterans who are suffering from painful exposure to toxic substances, burn pits, and Agent Orange. And so we are not just a no, we are a hard no across the Democratic caucus.
And do you hold everybody?
Well, those conversations are ongoing, but the overwhelming majority of House Democrats are already a publicly declared no, and we'll see where we land when we get to the floor later on this afternoon.
Let me ask one more question, then we'll get into the meat of this. So you want a 4-week CR. You want this to be kicked until the middle of April, roughly. And your hope is that the appropriators, you, the Speaker, could come up with some sort of large-scale spending bill at that point.
Well, it's the job of Congress to reach a full-year appropriations. That's good for the American people. It's good for our national security. This would be the first time that the defense industry would be subjected to a full-year continuing resolution as set forth in the bill that the Republicans want us to vote on. And it fails to make the investments that are necessary. So our view is pretty simple. There's a 4-week continuing resolution that is actually a clean bill, doesn't reflect enhanced Republican priorities, it doesn't reflect enhanced Democratic priorities. All it does is hold things where they are right now to allow for continued negotiations, to meet the needs of the American people. And by the way, this should not be that complicated. In May of 2023, as part of an agreement to avoid a catastrophic default on our nation's debt, we reached agreement around the Bipartisan Fiscal Responsibility Act, which actually set top-line spending numbers for both fiscal year 2024 and fiscal year 2025, which we are in right now. Those numbers have been set and agreed upon. And so that's the framework within which Democrats and Republicans were actually negotiating. consistent with current law. And then Donald Trump and Mike Johnson pulled the plug on those negotiations. We're saying we should be back at the negotiating table. Don't shut down the government with a partisan Republican spending bill. And let's reach a meaningful agreement that meets the needs of the American people.
It appears that Republicans are going to pass this legislation on their own. Pretty surprising. This should have been a time where I think we had kind of projected to say, hey, this is Democrats' one moment to stand together. There hasn't been a CR that has been passed only by Republicans into law, I think, since I've been covering Congress anyway. What's your next moment of leverage? If you hold people together, maybe you kind of are having some unity on that front, but going forward, reconciliation, you guys aren't really in the game on that. Where can Democrats stand up and actually kind of have an impact?
Well, we have to continue to make it clear for the American people that we are standing on the side of their health, their economic well-being, their national security, and their safety. That's why we're standing on the side of health care, standing on the side of Medicaid, of Social Security, of Medicare, and most importantly, standing on the side of actually trying to do something about the economy, which had been the critical and core issue in November. It's all my Republican colleagues talked about. We've got to lower the high cost of living. We agree. The cost of living in America is far too high. And we've got to bring down housing prices, bring down grocery costs, bring down utility costs, bring down insurance costs, bring down child care costs. America's too expensive for working families, working class folks, everyday Americans, middle class Americans. And we need to grow the economy. The economy was growing under the previous administration. And everything that was inherited, record job growth, record stock market, record low unemployment connected to the last 50 years. All of that is being unraveled in real time in less than 100 days. And our view is let's tackle the issues that matter in terms of making life better for everyday Americans and continuing to grow the economy.
Now, let's talk about your party more broadly. There is a debate that you have weighed in at times and is roiling, kind of, not roiling, but it's a hot topic among Democrats. What does the Democratic Party stand for? What are we in the post-Biden, which is really the post-Obama era? Is there a 30-second pitch? You just gave some version of it, but is there a 30-second pitch for what Democrats would now out of power, not in control of the House, not control of the Senate, not control of the presidency? What is that 30-second pitch for the Democratic Party right now?
Well, in my view, in America, when you work hard and play by the rules, you should be able to live a comfortable life and experience the American dream, right? That is not too much to ask in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. Work hard, play by the rules, you should be able to live a comfortable life and experience the American dream. And the problem is, the reason why there's so much anxiety, concern, even anger amongst people all across the country is that for far too many folks in America, that American dream is out of reach. And the notion that there are core elements to it, work hard, play by the rules, live a comfortable life, purchase a home, educate your children, have access to high quality and affordable health care, go on vacation every now and then, and one day be able to retire with grace and dignity. Those are the elements of the American dream, and for far too many people, it's out of reach. And as Democrats, we're committed to bringing that American dream to life. And our heroes who came back from World War II, part of the greatest generation, saved the world from fascism, saved democracy, and then built the greatest middle class in the history of the world. And that's at risk right now, and people are angry about it. And we've got to turn it around.
So you kind of lay out your vision for the American dream, the future. But why, in your view, do Americans keep electing Donald Trump?
Well, I think we are in a moment of the pendulum consistently swinging, right? And we've basically seen this from George H.W. Bush to Bill Clinton to George W. Bush, George W. Bush to Barack Obama to Donald Trump to Joe Biden back to Donald Trump. And I believe it will swing again in 2026
Back
midterms.
to Joe Biden.
It'll swing again in 2026, the House, and it's likely to swing in 2028. And the question has to be asked, why? Why does the pendulum keep swinging back and forth between people who have very different visions for America? It's because so many everyday Americans are in search of a resolution to that core challenge of an American dream that's broken. And this notion, generation after generation after generation, it was widely understood that your children and grandchildren were going to be able to do better than you. That was a core part of the promise of what America represents. And for a lot of folks, that contract has been broken. And so, pendulum has been swinging back and forth. What we have to be able to do is convince the American people that we are prepared with the fierce urgency of now to solve their core problems, which begins with building a stronger economy and making sure that we can, at this moment, lower the high cost of living for everyday Americans who are struggling to live paycheck to paycheck. Can't even think about getting ahead, can barely get by. That's a core problem that has to be challenged. And of course, there are other things: secure the border, keep communities safe, make sure we always keep the main thing, the health, the safety, the economic well-being of the American people. And that's the challenge that is in front of all of us as members of Congress and whoever chooses to run for president after the 2026 midterms.
We have a lot of CEOs in town this week, a lot of CEOs at the conference, our event that we're at right now. If you talk to corporate America, they look at Trump's agenda, cutting taxes, slashing regulation, cutting government spending, and they say, yeah, it sounds pretty good to me. And I think you've seen more willingness from corporate America to align themselves with Trump this time around. I'm curious if you have, clearly you don't agree with Donald Trump's views, and I'm wondering if you have a note of caution for corporate America about why they should be wary of of Trump's policies.
Well, I think we're seeing the economy being threatened in real time since January 20th, and we're barely at the halfway mark in terms of the first 100 days. And part of the challenge, of course, is that there doesn't seem to be a clear strategy as it relates to the economy and bringing about the most prosperous society possible. And so all this chaos has been unleashed on the American people. All this chaos has been unleashed in terms of policy. One day there's tariffs, then there's not tariffs, then there's increased tariffs, then we're going to pull back because Canada and Mexico are fighting back. But then we're going to decide to fight back and announce on Truth Social that there are more tariffs. And all the while, of course, the economy is being threatened in real time, as evidenced by the stock market, as evidenced by the decline in consumer confidence, as evidenced by the likelihood that consumers are going to pull back in terms of spending, and we are already seeing it in certain sectors of the economy, travel and hospitality. This is a business-friendly administration. It doesn't seem that way to me. And a core element for American business success, to me, seems to be certainty in the policy environment, certainty in the business environment, and that's not what exists right now. It's actually the exact opposite.
So we're obviously all focused on reconciliation, tax reform. If taxes were expiring under Democratic control, what would you do?
Well, I think the core priorities for us would be enhancing and expanding the child tax credit, which was a significant benefit to middle-class families, working families, and low-income families. Very few policy changes exist or are available for us to be able to enhance the lives of that many Americans, low-income, working class families, and middle-class families. And that's what the enhanced child tax credit did when it was included as part of the American Rescue Plan. It allowed people to have an ability to pay for basic expenses like housing and education and childcare, put food on the table and clothing on the backs of working class families and middle class families, and of course low-income families. That would be a top priority, and we've made that clear. Strengthening the low-income housing tax credit, I think, is one vehicle. That's been a bipartisan program since it was put into law, led by Charlie Rangel, Tip O'Neill, and President Reagan in the mid-'80s. That's an important program that we can lean into, and we've got to go beyond what is traditionally viewed as low-income housing because we have moderate-income folks and middle-class folks struggling to find housing. How can it be in America, police officers, firefighters, teachers, nurses, construction workers struggling to afford a home or afford to raise their family in a safe and decent environment? That can't be America. In addition to the low-income housing tax credit, I think we have to be creative about how we form public-private partnerships to encourage developers to build more housing across America in ways that will balance out the supply-demand problem that we have. And Vice President Harris spoke about this. Former President Obama, former President Clinton, House Democrats believe in it. We've got a supply problem as it relates to the housing market, and we've got to work with the private sector to grow our way out of it. And the tax code can be an important vehicle to encourage the type of activity necessary to get to a better place. And then the last thing I'd mention, being from New York, is that I think we have to restore the state and local tax deduction. The fact that it was taken away was aimed, it was a policy that was weaponized against certain states. And never before have I seen a policy weaponized against certain states that may have voted in a different direction in the most recent presidential election. We didn't do that with respect to the Inflation Reduction Act and the climate forward provisions that encourage public-private partnerships as it relates to standing up the clean energy economy. In fact, what the statistics show is that red states and purple states have gotten more of the benefits of that economic activity because we care about all Americans. And so, in my view, there would be strong support for complete restoration of the state and local tax deduction.
Now, you've had some members of your caucus who have been, let's call it Doge curious, who have aligned themselves, at least temporarily, with the Doge effort, said they'd be interested in cutting spending. I mean, has the time come and gone for Democrats to participate in any of that, given what's going on?
Well, yeah, it's a great question, Jake. I mean, I think there were people who may have been Doge curious early, but after the first date, were turned off. Right? We're turned off. Because what we've seen is just, this is not an effort to root out waste, fraud, and abuse. We support the effort to make sure that the federal government is as effective, as efficient, and as equitable as possible. We support that effort. But this Doge thing is about taking a chainsaw to all of the things that matter, as was reaffirmed yesterday by the leader of this so-called effort, who said, you know what? We're going after Social Security and Medicare. No ambiguity. We're going after Social Security and Medicare, which he claims, is an entitlement, which tells you that they're setting up the chainsaw effort. Because to be clear, Social Security and Medicare, they are not entitlement programs. They are earned benefits. Earned benefits. The American people pay in to Social Security and Medicare their entire life. I learned that lesson very early. I was 14 or 15 years old in Manhattan, my first job. I was a messenger going from office to office to office. And I was making $3.35 an hour. And I was told that because I'm in high school and because I was only going to earn a certain amount, I would not be paying taxes on that. So I just did the calculation, $3.35 an hour times about 15 to 20 hours a week. I was going to get my first paycheck 2 weeks in. I had that money calculated and spent. Calculated and spent. And then I get my first check. And I look at it, and money's been taken out, contrary to what I was told. And I had two questions that I asked. Who is FICA? And why is he taking my money? And I subsequently learned it's because the American people actually pay into Social Security and Medicare from the very beginning of your journey in the workforce. These are earned benefits. And so this whole called DOGE effort is not about anything other than dismantling the things that really matter to the American people. And as Democrats, we're not going to stand for it.
All right, we are quickly running out of time, so I want to get to a couple more questions. One, give us your read on Mike Johnson. He's defied political gravity a couple times already.
I think the best thing that Mike Johnson has going for him right now is the fact that Donald Trump is his chief whip at the end of the day. And when Donald Trump says jump, everyone says how high, apparently other than Massey. Now, they're going to have to defend the fact that they have set in motion the largest Medicaid cut in American history because Donald Trump demanded that they do it. And children will be devastated, families will be devastated, everyday Americans with disabilities will be devastated, older Americans in nursing homes will be devastated, nursing homes will be shut down across America, and hospitals will close in rural America, in urban America, in small town America, and in the heartland of America. And that's a vote that they now own. Because it's not that Mike Johnson told them to do it. That bill was dead on the House floor, dead. Until Donald Trump picked up the phone, made calls, and demanded that they fall in line. And of course, that's exactly what they did. We are going to stand on the side of the American people.
Mike Johnson says, and he'll be here in a little bit, we'll ask him about this too, he's pretty confident that he will not only keep the majority in 2026, he will grow the majority in 2026. To be fair, he said he was going to grow the majority in 2024. He did not. He netted out, he lost seats, at least in the final consideration of it. What is your thought on 2026?
We're going to win back control of the House of Representatives.
No doubt about that.
I have no doubt about it. In fact, they've accelerated the pace of our capacity to do it because they've been so extreme in how they've conducted themselves in unleashing chaos in the American people and done nothing about the core issue. You can't promise all year in 2024 that you're going to drive down the high cost of living, including on day one, while running away from Project 2025 as if it didn't exist. That's what you said to the American people. And then, when it's governing time, you do nothing about the high cost of living. Not a single bill, not a single administrative action, not a single executive order designed to address the economy. In fact, the president comes to the House floor, delivers a joint address to Congress, speaks for 140 minutes, less than 2 on the economy. It's because they have no agenda. And costs aren't going down, they're going up. Inflation is going up. So it's not only that grocery prices didn't fall on day one. They're actually going up. America is becoming more expensive, in part driven by this erratic Trump tariff set of policies. While at the same time, every single thing that's being done, including this partisan spending bill that's on the floor, is being done in service of Project 2025. I thought y'all told me it didn't exist or you didn't know about it, but now you're all in on it. So these are broken promises to the American people, and it will have political consequences for them, just like they underperformed, even with Trump at the top of the ticket, and they wouldn't even be in the majority had they not taken 3 seats in mid-decade partisan gerrymandering from North Carolina, which they won't have available to them this time around.
Last question. What should the Democrats' message be in 2026? What's your headline?
Listen, headline basically is we're going to continue to fight for the people, to make life better for everyday Americans and protect the things that matter, like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
All right, we are going to leave it there.
Hakeem Jeffries,
Hakeem Jeffries, thank you so much.
Thank you.